1.
Alzheimer's disease. What is Alzheimer's? Alzheimer's is a progressive disease that affects the brain. Progressive means that it happens over time, so a patient gets symptoms of Alzheimer's over time and not all in one day or week. Because it is progressive, this means that it usually occurs in older citizens. It causes many cognitive side effects and can adversely affect someone's life. Many people forget about their daily routine, how to do simple tasks, and even often their family members or loved ones. How many people are affected? Alzheimer's disease is very common within America, proven by the statistics that someone can develop Alzheimer's every 65 seconds, as well as the fact that it is a very common form of death within America. The high rates of people affected is also proven by the large amount of people caring for their loved ones with the disease. Around 16.1 million people care for their loved ones without any pay or assistance. How common is it? Alzheimer's is very common in dementia, and is in fact the most common form of dementia. Dementia is the umbrella term for Alzheimer's. It is very common within the United States, and many people are affected by the disease. Here shows statistics for Alzheimer's disease. It is growing extremely common and is estimated to be even more common in 2050. In red, it shows that it is the 6th leading cause of death in America. Many people die when the disease is fully developed because their bodies can no longer function on their own. The orange box shows that the disease is very costly. It currently costs the nation around $277 billion, but is estimated to cost $1.1 trillion by 2050. The yellow oval shows that 1 in 3 people die of Alzheimer's or other forms of dementia, which is more than breast and prostate cancer combined. Lastly, the green circle shows that 5.7 million people are living with Alzheimer's, and this is projected to become more by 2050, estimated to be around 14 million. All of these statistics show how vast amounts of people are affected by the disease and how common it truly is. Beginning symptoms. Some basic early beginning symptoms for Alzheimer's patients include difficulty remembering, disorientation, mood and behavior changes, memory loss, difficulty speaking, walking, and talking, unfounded suspicions about people, and confusion about time, place, or location. 10 early signs and symptoms of Alzheimer's. 10 early signs and symptoms are memory loss that disrupts life, challenges in planning or solving problems, difficulty completing familiar tasks at home, at work, or at leisure, confusion with time or place, trouble understanding visual images in spatial relationships, new problems with words in speaking or writing, misplacing things and losing the ability to retrace steps, decreased or poor judgment, withdrawal from work or social activities, and change in mood or personality. How a diagnosis is made. When making a diagnosis, doctors often look at the family history. They look to see if previous family members have had Alzheimer's or other forms of dementia. They also look to see when behaviors changed in patients and if the patients are taking any medications that could increase side effects. They also conduct a physical exam. In this, they look at vital signs such as blood pressure. They do this to see if any conditions can be detectable that are signs of Alzheimer's. Lastly, for the neurological tests, they assess balance, sensory response, reflexes, and cognitive functions. These factors can help doctors make a diagnosis. Timelines within different patients. There are typically 3 general stages in Alzheimer's. In the mild or early stages of Alzheimer's, people can function well on their own. They often can do tasks on their own, but have some lapses in memory. Often the patient doesn't notice the starting symptoms as much as their loved ones do. Some common difficulties in the early stages include problems with coming up with words or names, performing tasks in social or workplaces, losing or misplacing valuable objects, etc. The moderate or middle stages are usually the longest stages. In this stage, people require more care because they cannot function on their own as well. These patients are more emotional as it becomes very difficult to perform everyday tasks. Some common difficulties include forgetting events or one's own past history, an increased risk of wandering and becoming lost, feeling moody or withdrawn, etc. The severe or late stage is the final stage of Alzheimer's. People need a lot of assistance in this stage as they cannot respond to people or their environment. They cannot carry conversations and they cannot control their own movement. They cannot communicate well as their memory and cognitive skills are very poor, and this can significantly change their personality. They need constant care, their physical abilities change, they become susceptible to infections, etc. This shows the progression and time period of Alzheimer's disease. It shows where the brain is affected and for how long it can last. The red box shows that with mild cognitive impairment, the disease starts in the medial temporal lobe, which is highlighted in the brain, circled in red. The orange box shows the next step, or mild Alzheimer's. This occurs for 2 years in the temporal or parietal lobes, which is highlighted in the orange circle. The next step is moderate Alzheimer's. It occurs for 2 years, and here it spreads to the frontal lobe, which is highlighted in green. Lastly, severe Alzheimer's, which is in the blue box, lasts for 3 years, and in this stage, it spreads to the occipital lobe, which is highlighted in the blue circle. Early onset Alzheimer's disease. Early onset Alzheimer's occurs in patients under the age of 65. It typically occurs in patients in their 40s or 50s. A diagnosis for these patients can be much harder. Doctors are not looking for Alzheimer's as the patient is not in the ideal age range for the disease. Therefore, getting a diagnosis is much harder. The diagnosis process, however, is the same. Just coming to the conclusion of Alzheimer's is more difficult. New research shows that the cause for early onset Alzheimer's could be caused by a mutation on codon 717 on the B-amyloid gene. It has been shown to How early it can start. Normal Alzheimer's can start as early as 65 and progress on from there. Some patients, however, are older when they develop the disease, and some are younger. For early onset Alzheimer's patients, their disease can develop as young as in their 40s. Environmental causes of Alzheimer's. Some environmental cues that can contribute to Alzheimer's and lead to more of a risk of Alzheimer's include head trauma that causes memory loss, such as concussions, smoking, alcohol intake, and a Mediterranean diet. This shows what happens in the brain when a person gets a concussion. A concussion is one of the outside factors that can contribute to getting Alzheimer's. It shows how people with a history How it happens genetically. Alzheimer's happens genetically when there is a gene mutation that is passed down from a parent. Plaques and tangles are created, which kill nerve cells and lead to the patient not being able to do as much because the nerve and cells are degenerating. Plaques are protein deposits that build up, and tangles are twisted fibers. These plaques and tangles have been shown to arrange themselves in certain patterns in Alzheimer's patients. The deconstruction and death of nerve cells and the mutations on 3 genes known as APP, PSEN1, and PSEN2 are responsible for Alzheimer's. This shows how the tangles and plaques are in an Alzheimer's brain versus what a normal healthy brain looks like. Molecular differences in an Alzheimer's brain. Molecular differences in the brain occur years before a diagnosis is even made. Billions of nerve cells connect to each other, and when this group forms, plaques or tangles, it damages the cell factory from working and then leads to the degeneration of the brain. This damage also progresses, which is why the disease is known as a progressive disease. These images show how a brain with Alzheimer's is different from a normally functioning brain. It deteriorates the brain and therefore the function of the brain as well. It also shows how the brain becomes less defined and therefore doesn't function normally. Treatment. Some treatment options for Alzheimer's patients include medication and non-medication treatments. Non-medication treatments include enhancing social interactions with others, like walking, talking, or dancing, as well as cognitive rehabilitation. In cognitive rehabilitation, they practice memory skills on a computer. Strategies for patients and families. Some strategies for patients include focusing on one task at a time, recognizing stress triggers, and creating a daily routine, amongst many other treatments and strategies. Studies being conducted. There are thousands of studies being conducted that are helping to find cures, prevention, and treatment for the disease. There are many clinical trials that people are participating in at this time. Here shows some of the many studies being conducted. How it travels in the family. Alzheimer's travels genetically. The pedigrees show how the disease travels through chromosomes in the families. Risks of getting Alzheimer's. The risk for getting Alzheimer's in people 65 and older is 10%, and it is 50% for those 85 and older. As the life expectancy grows in the United States, the risk of getting the disease grows as well. Other risks are diabetes and aging.